but also have really never heard him. He said to me during the football season when I asked him, if somebody you were recruiting mentioned NIL immediately, would you continue to recruit that student athlete? And he said, absolutely I would, but we would have to have discussions on exactly what a lot of that means. So I asked him this question today about Baylor football and NIL.
Do you think Baylor's ready to play in the NIL landscape? Is this school prepared to do what it has to do? Do you see that yet?
I do. I think it is getting better. I think from where it I think my philosophy on that is to be in it, and I feel like we're in it, and I feel like when kids come, that is something they bring up, and they want to know what is it can be done, and when we give them kind of our talk and say this is what it is, I think it is a piece of the puzzle for them with the faith and the education and just how they're going to be treated and how, that kind of that hero's journey we talked about. I think those are probably the main pieces of the pie. And then there is the NIL piece, which is a critical one, Now, I believe that piece is getting bigger. And so like our ability to kind of grow with that piece, I think for all of us, I'll go this far as speaking for me, but also for all of us, we just don't want the whole pie to be that. And I feel like that is the case in some other spots. And so for us to be us, I think to keep it a piece and stay in it is we're on track to do that.
Now, the other part of it, the follow-up question was about how does he like this NIL? Does he want it where it's equitable, or is it like just for those who have the largest demand?
I've talked with some coaches this off season that talk about it. Whereas if you're an All-American or multiple All-Conference, or if you're a first or second round draft pick, you're getting this much money. That would be a tier. And then if you're a starter, if you're, not on any of the good lists, if you're on all the good, if not on any of the bad lists, but you're on the good list, maybe you're on a poster on I-35 trying to get people to come to the games, you're on tier 2. Then tier 3 would be, hey, you're on the team, you don't embarrass the team, here's a little something for you to be on the team. And I just think, if you do it that way, I wonder, what does that do for team chemistry? What does that do for, frankly, I don't think we have anyone in tier 1 anyways, and so I don't know what that does for, who's making the decisions, who's tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, right? What's the organization for communicating that to the players and their families? And, if it is truly person over player, how does that play into, hey, this player makes more money than this other player, and, I could do that, but you're not giving me the opportunity. And I don't know, I just think it's a disruptor, I feel, and I don't know if it necessarily needs to go that path. And so I look at it more as here's something that everyone on the team gets, and we're able to kind of build from there. And so, but that's a good one. It's becoming more and more of a topic, because I have to imagine doing it in a tier way is possibly a less expensive way.
You have Texas Tech that did the $25,000, and then also that includes some walk-ons. And when that came out, I was like, that's brilliant. Everybody wins, even those who are walk-on players, depending on, I guess, how many. I think it was brilliant with what they did at Tech. And to me, that would be the way that would be less disruptive. But if you have, and I thought he was incredibly honest, that really they don't have like one of those like mega type guys that's going to get whatever those numbers we see reported across the board.
No, I also think it's especially for people who aren't, swimming in the big pool yet, overall, it's the best way to do it and approach it, because when somebody does get into what would be that tier 1 status where they're in demand for NIL, then they kind of go and earn, like, everybody's getting this, and you're kind of earning it by your play on the field, where now you are creating that value. I think that more importantly, the way to steer this is going to be through constant roster retention, so you don't have to re-recruit your own players all the time, that they're going to be taken care of and good. And then, look, if you are good enough, if you are Bryce Young, if you are the Joe Burrow types, or, you know, the guys like, you know, we talked about yesterday, like Quinshon Judkins, yeah, you know what? Quinshon Judkins going to be in demand, and he's going to make a little bit more money because he's going to have other places where he's more valuable to that as far as endorsements or social media goes, because he has more of a following. But it's not something where I told the 2 running backs recruited at the same time that this one's worth more and this one's worth less, even though they may, you know, the numbers may say differently. So I think it's better to do it the Texas Tech way, and then anything above that, you're in some regards hunting for your own meat.
Well, the Texas Tech way is also a great way to get it's basically doing the Nebraska walk-ons program, but in a totally different way. But you're getting the same benefit. You're paying 35 walk-ons $25K a piece. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, you're adding – those aren't just your typical walk-on guys. I would have to imagine there's probably some scouting that went into those walk-ons, and, you know, like – there are various options. So it's brilliant if you can do it, but not everybody has just $3 million lying around to burn on just simple roster base salary. And if you do have that, like in Lubbock or wherever else they have that, then that's a great tool to have. But I guess the next best thing would be just not have that at all, and so everybody's still on the same playing field. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like a problem he hadn't really had to deal with just yet in the grand scheme of things, but one that's not going to go away. And, you know, I don't know that there's any donor, you know, on the verge of, hey, here's $3 million, everybody gets $25,000, including 35 walk-ons or whatever. It doesn't appear to be the case. So, you know, is that what creates the separation nowadays, as opposed to, you know, just making the right hire, running the right scheme, just finding ways to win football games? It might be where the edge comes in nowadays. It certainly appears that there are, you know, certainly a lot of advantages that are coming via NIL programs that aren't necessarily winning at a high level, or able to land players they normally probably wouldn't get because of the NIL piece of it. So yeah, I mean, it's something to monitor and something to make note of. And he's absolutely right. Like, if he had said, well, we got one guy who's making 50, I would have been like, who? Because they don't really have a superstar type of player at the moment, at least. Now, if you had gone back a couple years and they'd had your Petries and, you know, maybe a JT Woods or an Abram Smith or those types of guys, even still, like, maybe only Petries really like a – give this guy $50,000 and, you know, he gets it for being a great football player.
Yeah, because Abram's big year was his last year. So it'll been.
Well, that was the same year.
Yeah, I know.
That was when they won it.
Well, Petrie had already kind of established himself, yeah.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, he really, though, he broke out that final year, too. Yeah. If you think about it. That was really Jalen's big final year. All that came together beautifully. But, yeah, I mean, I would imagine Aranda's had to go to the well a few times and say, like, hey, we need this and we need that. But if there's not, you know, a big fish that's going to become swimming in anytime soon, it just leaves you with a lot of things to try and figure out and how to best balance that. And, you know, I'm sure he's clearly put a lot of thought into it, but I don't know what you do. And I don't know what you do, especially if they arrive at a point where that suddenly becomes like the main thing. How does person over player interact with that? Because right now it doesn't seem like it's the main thing necessarily for a lot of the guys they're pursuing. But it could be, and when it does become that, how do you adjust to that?
All right, so earlier today,